Oops, someone.
Hello?
Hello.
Y como veo. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. It seems that I have a problem because I cannot share my screen and also without showing the control panel. Okay, now, sorry. So, hi everyone, and welcome to this fourth Cyberwatching webinar. I would like to thank the speakers for participating in this webinar and also the people who is joining us. I'm not going to make a presentation. I just want to explain the motivation of this session because last July we organized a webinar around cybersecurity as an opportunity in a changing market. And then there were a lot of questions regarding one of the presentations about cyber risk in SMEs. So that's why we thought that organizing a specific webinar on this topic would be very interesting for SMEs, especially when statistics show that between 60% and 70% of the SMEs are unable to survive a breach and they are out of business within 6 months. So today, we will try to address the main barriers for SMEs. How do they actually manage the cyber risk? And also, we will go through some possible solutions from research projects. First of all, Nicholas Ferguson, who is the project coordinator of Cyberwatching, is going to give an overview of the main assets of Cyberwatching project. Then, as we have 6 speakers, we are going to split the session into parts, and after each part, there will be a 5 minutes round of questions and answers. So please, Nick, some rules for the speakers, and please close your webcams. Only if you want to start your webcam at the beginning of your talk, you can do it. Each speaker has 10 minutes. If you have any question, please use the chat box in the right, and we will deal with the questions in each question and answer blocks. This webinar is being recorded and will be available online in the coming days, and all the presentations will be also available online. So, Nick, I hand over to you for your presentations.
Thank you very much, Marina. I'll just wait for the, I think you have to pass me the presenter credentials. Okay. So apologies because I'm not entirely sure how to get this on full screen, but that's big enough, I think. So let me introduce the Cyberwatching project very briefly, because I think the main meat of the of this webinar is in the presentations which are following, because we have lots of different perspectives from lots of different people, from SMEs to different people working in R&I projects, and this is one of the main focuses of the Cyberwatching project. So we are a project which is funded by the European Commission. We have a lifetime of 4 years, and we're currently in the middle of our, well, we're 18 months basically. So we have a number of results which I'd like to talk to you about today. 3 main assets which I'll focus on, which is firstly creating an observatory of research and innovation in cybersecurity and privacy. Secondly, an end user club, which is actually targeting is specifically created for SMEs, and the marketplace, a cybersecurity and private marketplaplace. So we have a very strong consortium. A number of partners are on the line today, including CITIC, which is actually works with AEI, which is a Spanish cybersecurity cluster. And we're very pleased also to have John Davis on the line from South Wales cluster. So there's lots of different players in the cybersecurity and privacy landscape, such as clusters, SMEs, large industry, and also the research community itself. So funding for cybersecurity and privacy is pretty big. It's a main priority in Europe. The Commission fund this area of project fund cybersecurity and privacy to the tune of 600 million euro, and this is matched and even surpassed by countries as well. So we have the UK, which is spending something like 2 billion. But the question that our project asks is, what exactly are these projects? Who are these projects? What are they doing? And are they working together well enough? And can we help them in some way to cluster together and perhaps collaborate more, and to ensure that their results actually do make some kind of impact on end users, and in particularly the small businesses in Europe, which make up a large percentage of the European economy. So one of our main assets is to create an observatory of projects. Now, these include projects such as cyberwatching, such as some of the projects we have on the webinar today, which are funded by the European Commission. We also have projects which are funded by regional funding agencies, and projects funded nationally. So we currently have 200 projects posted on the observatory. So this is pretty big. It's pretty important, and importantly, it collects all this information in one single place, and we have links going off to all of the different websites that these projects have. Our target is to actually create an observatory of 500 projects by the time that our funding finishes, and we're looking at future sustainability models to keep this going. So our objective is to create a landscape so people can actually, look and find out what is happening or what has happened in this space. Now, as I said, and thanks for the introduction, Marina, a number of the projects that we have in our observatory are also on the call today, and they are really raising the bar in terms of cutting edge research in this area of cybersecurity and privacy. And we have some very interesting presentations on how the results of these projects can make an impact on small businesses. And we have a range of innovative solutions, from creating a cyber range platform to help small businesses to understand how better to manage risk, to actual tools and facilities specifically for SMEs, with the SMESEC project. So we have a mix of projects which are coming to an end, so they've got tangible results already, and we've got some projects such as Cyberwiser, which is building on results that they've already published and are already available online, and they're creating new results over the next 2 to 3 years. Now, as I said, we have John Davis on the call today, on the webinar today, and he's from a cluster. And another of our outputs of this project is to create a catalogue of clusters, which you can see. You have the link here, because there's a very vibrant community of SMEs around Europe being supported by organisations such as John's, with training, with support in how to, better get results to end users, and basically to improve the level of knowledge that these organizations have in this area. Now, a real challenge that any company has, any provider of cybersecurity services has, is actually testing them out. And it's the same with EC funded projects, nationally funded projects. They do all this research, and a lot of effort and focus goes into this, but then actually testing and validating these results can often be a challenge. So we've just launched, just about 10 days ago actually, an end user club, which is specifically targeting SME and ICT intensive SMEs who would like to try out new services which are coming either from companies or also mainly projects in research and innovation projects in this area. Now, the opportunities that a company have here is visibility, really, because we have a large reach on a European basis with our website and through our social media challenges. So but in addition, you also have the chance to test some of these exciting and cutting edge new results which are coming from projects and some of the projects that you'll hear today. So if you're interested in this, you can find out more information online, and please do have a look at this and get in touch with us if you have any questions. You should be an SME though that's interested in testing new things and potentially adopting these new solutions. Now, another question that we ask is, how can we help projects and also companies in terms of getting better visibility for their results and their services? And in addition to this, again, just launched about 10 days ago, we've also published a marketplace. So again, this helps projects in terms of getting nearer to end users, and basically is an online space where you can promote, if you're a provider, you can promote the products or the services that you have, and also projects can promote the end results of their projects through the marketplace. It's very, very simple, simple registration, simple in terms of uploading your information about your organization and the information about your service or product. Now, so we have two aspects here. We have a provider section of the marketplace and also a user section of the marketplace. So if you are an ICT intensive organization, then you can register as a user and you can actually contact these organizations directly. So we act as a kind of middleman, if you like, or middle person, sorry, in terms of helping creating a single place where projects and organizations can promote their services. So that's basically what I really wanted to cover in this webinar. To say that the observatory is online, to say that the SME End User Club is brand new and we're calling out for SMEs to join and to help you give visibility and test out these new services, and also to give you the opportunity to network in what is a very vibrant and exciting area with funding available through different projects, and also the marketplace in terms of a single area where projects and organizations have another channel of visibility to reach end users. So if you have any questions, then please put them in the chat, and we have a time for questions halfway through the webinar, and you can also write to me or contact me at the details here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. And now, to start with some interesting research results about SMEs needs regarding cybersecurity issues, I'm handing over to Samuel Fricker from the University of Applied Science, Northwestern Switzerland. He is a partner of the SMESEC project, which is developing a suite of cybersecurity tools to support SMEs in managing network information security risks and threats. Samuel, your 10 minutes start now.
Hello, here is Samuel Fricker. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Samuel, we can hear you. You can start.
Okay, one moment, please. Good. Can you also see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen perfectly.
Okay, very good. Well, first, I would like to thank you very much for the invitation to this webinar on with invitation talk about cybersecurity needs and barriers of SMEs. This is both from our project background very important, as well as my personal background. So perhaps let me introduce myself rapidly. I'm a professor of requirements engineering, assistant professor at the Blaking Institute of Technology. And myself, I'm also having a number of SME experiences, including from service business as well as of the product business. And I'm right now leading an international association, which could also be considered an SME, as well as helping a startup project, the Bonsai project, which is a marketplace for artificial intelligence, to get started. And it's kind of in this environment, or from this environment that I'm coming, and try to look at, well, how should we address, we as SMEs, how should we address cybersecurity? That's also just as a background, perhaps the voice quality is not perfect. We are now in the middle of the IoT Solutions World Congress in Barcelona, which is a 13,000 participants fair. We're also talking about SMESEC. You see, for example, in our background, the panels of cybersecurity, and we're having here a number of participants who are also joining us here and today. The project that I'm coming from is the SMESEC project. SME stands for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises. SEC stands for cybersecurity. And what we're doing basically is a lightweight cybersecurity framework for thorough protection. So I would like to introduce you to the background of why we came up with this thinking. And would like to invite you, perhaps even in the meantime, to have a visit to our webpage on www.smesec.eu. In Switzerland, there is, and I'm a Swiss person, in Switzerland, there is lots of discussions ongoing right now in terms of cybersecurity. Can you still hear me? Can you still hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, very good, yes. So in Switzerland, there is lots ongoing in cybersecurity. Like, for example, just about a month ago, even the main news format at Swiss television was in its prime news magazine, disseminating this case of cybersecurity attacks. And what we see here is a CEO of a medium-sized company, a logistics company in Switzerland. Well, and what he was telling was that they were very lucky for not being out of business. So what has happened to them is they're doing the business as usual, running after customers, running after contracts, delivering and executing according to this contract, and suddenly the computers were blocked. The thing that has happened is that an employee clicked on a wrong link in an email that he has received. This is a so-called phishing attack. And as a result of that, the attackers succeeded to install ransomware on the machines of that company. And then on one click of a button, all the machines of the company were blocked. And the only way out is then to pay the ransom. And well, for this company executives, this was not something which was okay. The company was lucky. The company was lucky because they succeeded to actually do regular backups, which is one of the easy practices that any company can do. Regular backups of the software, of the data, so that they actually could restore the systems again. And the impact of these attacks, of blocking their computers, was kind of minimal. And this is basically, for me, a very inspiring story of how SMEs can address cybersecurity. On one side, SMEs have become more and more an attack target, and I think in the meantime we have more and more understanding also of how SMEs can address this issue. What you see here, for example, is that the case that I was just showing you before is not a single case, but it's a case which is increasingly often. If you look at the right-hand side of the figure, you see actually that the dark blue ones, which is the small enterprises, have become a more dominant target than the large enterprises, which in history have been the target. So the attack pattern starts to change, and those companies that need to worry are actually the small ones, actually those that are not worrying today. So I think we have a joint undertaking to inform SMEs that they are actually at danger, and at the same time give them the right tools in order to answer this kind of danger. There are a number of challenges in this environment. Like I was just mentioning one challenge, which is the awareness challenge. We're working right now with 4 SMEs that act as a test bed for our development of the SMESEC tools. And what we have done is we have taken our SMESEC reference model and have benchmarked these companies' practices against what would be state of the art. And you see actually one company, the top right company, is rather okay. So they have a number of green fields, while, for example, the bottom right, they don't do any cybersecurity at all. So if they would be attacked now with such a ransomware attack, well, they would not have any backups of their systems, and they would be a very easy prey then for these attackers. And this is something which makes them feel very uncomfortable, and for that reason, they're starting actually to build cybersecurity, also with the help, evidently, of the SMESEC project. Second thing is, once a company knows, there is also a motivation issue. I mean, as an employee or as a private person, what should you do? Should you try to get the next customer contract? Should you implement what you need to deliver tomorrow? Or should you worry about cybersecurity and stop perhaps your company for a day and then reflect of how can you improve cybersecurity so that you're not exposed to being such an attack? And what we observe is the same thing as we observe also in medicine. There is a huge percentage of non-adherence rates. So that even if you know that cybersecurity may be important, adherence is rather low for cybersecurity. And in our understanding and our research points points to the direction that it is about cost and value. So as an SME, you need to understand what the value is of something that you're doing. You need to understand what are the important cyber attacks that you are likely to be exposed to. And this is very much connected to your business model of your company. And then based on the knowledge of well, what could give you a potential value through a kind of you can think of cybersecurity as an insurance. So what kind of protection would help you to secure your business? Just to give you another example, cost of data breach, for example, here. One of our SMESEC partners, IBM, did a recent study on this question here, a worldwide study, and they discovered that a successful breach of an attacker into the company's systems and stealing the data, for example, customer data out of that company, leads to an average loss for the company of 3.86 million. Now think yourself, you're an SME, and let's say that this average figure actually applies also to you. Well, there is quite a risk that you may need to close this business because you basically are going to be sued by your customers, and you may even have regulatory issues eventually. So even if you succeed to, or if you have smaller data sets and have a business which does not imply such a big cost for a data breach, the study is also interesting because it has shown that in average it's about $148 that as a cost, including the recovery costs, that you need to count for when you are having a data breach. And now it's up to you to make the numbers and to calculate how much actually you would be exposed to that risk and what the financial bottom line actually of it would be. I was talking about cost and value. So the value part I just addressed. There is also the cost part. Cybersecurity is complicated. Cybersecurity is complex. Large companies can address that because it's they have cybersecurity experts employed. Small companies, well, for them it's even hard to find out who could be a expert in cybersecurity. And then taking the second step of employing somebody just for cybersecurity is most likely to be a no-go. So we're working together with a number of associations. Like here, I'm showing a result of a cooperation of a result of SATW, which is within a Swiss initiative. And this result is kind of a simple checklist, contains about 100 checklist items that you simply can go through. Yes, no, yes, no. Like, for example, have you determined who is responsible for cybersecurity in your organization? If you don't have, think about it. Would it be worth to say you are accountable for cybersecurity? If there is any data breach, it's your decisions which are going to be questioned. That can be quite powerful in order to start the thinking in the organization about cybersecurity. Or in the block number 2, do your employees have company guidelines for dealing with email and digital data and internet security? So if you have guidelines and you use them to teach the employees of how that they should not open links in emails for ransomware, that's a step forward. But this is yet another problem. A problem with this state of the art. Which company, which SME wants to write guidelines for cybersecurity? We don't even have the expertise for that in our company. So a good approach would be to look for such guidelines, and this is exactly where SMESEC runs in or jumps into the picture. We are in the middle of developing a coach for companies that helps you, that allows you actually to walk through such kind of checklist and allows you to do it easy. Allows you to do it in a do-it-yourself way without writing own complicated checklists, but the things are already embedded in the tool. So in the first step, you tell what is your business model, and the tool will adapt actually to the needs of your company. And what you see here on this screenshot on the left-hand side, there is even teaching elements. So we have a number of educational units that which are simply short videos that you can go through in order to get an introduction to the important topics and then make the right decisions of whether, here in this case on the screen, of whether you want to automate patching or not yet, or whether it's actually not applicable to your company. So we are building a coach that can take you at the hand and then walks you through the improvements in order to secure your company, respectively doing a insurance for your company. The SMESEC framework consists also of a number of additional tools. Let me just here give you an outline of the brands which are behind it. Some of you might know Bitdefender Total Security. I, as a private person, have also downloaded it and use it to protect my my PC. So what SMESEC is doing is taking these kind of solutions, adapting them to small and medium-sized enterprises, so that eventually with a click on the button, you can actually install these tools and you have your company protected. And the coach takes you through a few lightweight steps in order also to inform your employees in an appropriate way and to ensure that it's not a human error which leads eventually then to a cybersecurity problem. We are launching a beta program in January 2019. Then in June 2019, we scale it up this funding opportunity for participation in the beta program. If you're interested in joining the beta program, you can start with the link that I have indicated at the bottom right, smesec.eu/survey. With that survey, we get to know a bit your company, your perception of cybersecurity, and as a result, at the end of the survey, you get the possibility to register and join the beta program for the SMESEC coach as well as the tools. With that, I would like to thank you, and I hope that your SME stays safe and your business continues to be successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Samuel. That was very interesting. It's clear that small business should start to worry about cyber attacks to protect their business. And it's very interesting also what you said about your project and the people, the SMEs can join this beta program. So they should have to be on your project. Okay, now I hand over to John Davis from Cyberwatching cluster. That is a cluster of 5 cybersecurity cluster. So John, you have now 10 minutes since now. Just okay. Hi, John.
Lovely. Hi, thanks very much indeed. My screen's just come up. I hope everybody can see the slides on your screen now. We run a series of clusters around the country of Wales to help cybersecurity companies, SMEs who are cybersecurity companies, to grow, but also to help them to spread the message out to their customer base and therefore out to all customers in Wales, out to all companies in Wales about how they should improve their cybersecurity. So this slide deck, which is just a short slide deck, is one of a series of presentations that have been developed by members of the cluster itself. So a number of different expertise, different experts from different areas have all come together to create a set of slides, which, as you can see, we've termed the must-dos of cybersecurity. We have the must-dos of data protection, the must-dos of GDPR, the must-dos of other topics as well. But this is then used by cluster members, not only with their own customers, but also if they're going out to do presentations with other business groups, like the Federation of Small Businesses, the Confederation of Business Industries. So whenever we're doing talks, this is what this presentation or these presentations are for. So really, this presentation is, as the name implies, a relatively high-level presentation designed to give SMEs a roadmap or some clues as to how they should address cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a very complex subject, and it's very difficult sometimes for SMEs who are not cybersecurity experts to appreciate what they should do in their businesses to improve their own cybersecurity. So I'll just run through these slides and you can see what our messaging is. So the first thing that an organization should do before they do anything else with regards to data protection is a risk assessment. And I know that the theme of today's session is all about risk. It's all about management of risk, particularly with SMEs. And so the idea that cybersecurity is in fact all about risk and all about having a risk assessment and making business decisions about that risk has got to come first. So what we're asking SMEs to do here is to look at all of the data and the information they hold and say, of all of the information and data in my business, on all of my devices and all of my filing cabinets and all of my paper that I have in my company, which bits of information are the ones that could put me at risk? And what we're looking at here is a number of, or two different aspects of risk. So the first risk is obviously a risk of breach. So if your data systems were breached and personal data becomes stolen or is used or is blocked in any way, then this could cause the organization some reputational or financial loss. and this is a risk to the business. So we should look at this risk of breach. What is the risk of my IT systems actually being penetrated in some way by a hack? But we also must also add into this equation now the risk of complaint, because the General Data Protection Regulation and the corresponding data protection laws that have been rolled out across all member states in Europe and are being rolled out across the world are all now paying attention to the rights and freedoms of individuals with regards to their personal data. So it's not simply a risk of having a data breach that might trigger an independent supervisory authority from knocking on the door of a business and saying, you have misused or mistreated data. You have not lived up to your responsibilities as a data controller or a data processor, and therefore we need to audit you and potentially fine you substantial sums of money because you haven't looked after your data properly. What can also trigger that is a data subject making a complaint, or a whole load of data subjects all making a complaint. So it's not only suffering a breach that might bring you into the spotlight of an independent supervisory authority, it would also be a complaint. So we must also look at the way that we deal with data, the way that we handle data, and say to ourselves, what is the risk of somebody out there, one of our customers, one of our partners, complaining about the way we handle personal data? Because this would also result in reputational and or financial loss. So we now have to look at two risks when we do this risk assessment. And what we're understanding here is what information, what data, or what data processes should I really be paying attention to? Because somewhere in my organization, I might have data about what was purchased in the canteen or the restaurant that day. What was it sitting in my stock cupboards? What orders did I put in for printer cartridges this month? And this is data that's in my organization, but it is not applicable to data protection laws. And also, it's not particularly risky data. If somebody got hold of records as to how much data cartridge ink I ordered last month, having that data and releasing that data and using that data is not going to put my organization at risk. So I shouldn't, as an SME, I shouldn't be attempting to protect all data in my company. I should be looking at my data and deciding what data and information should I be protecting and what data and information do I not need to pay so much attention to, and focus my attention only on the data that puts me at risk. So this is the first step in the process. The second step in the process then is actually to get some penetration testing done. And the best way to do this actually is to ask a white hat hacker, a penetration tester, to actually go into my organization and get the data that I'm trying to protect. So tell them where it is, tell them the nature of that data, give them all the information I can about where that data is stored, and say, here's where it is. It's on these servers, it's on these machines, it's in these filing cabinets. Now, please do your best to get at that data and see if you can get it. And of course, as we all know, penetration testers will succeed in doing that. Again, I don't need the penetration tester to penetration test the entire organization, every single piece of data in my company. I'm only interested in the penetration test of the risky data, of the data that puts me at risk, and saying these are the vulnerabilities I want to know. And of course, a penetration tester will then run through a series of tests and will be able to identify for me what the vulnerabilities are in my organization. And hopefully the penetration tester will also be able to translate that into a document that I can understand, and explain to me where my vulnerabilities are at that particular time, and tell me what the most likely methods, the most likely attacks that a black hat hacker, a real hacker, would use to get at that data at that particular point in time. So I now have a document which tells me exactly what the vulnerabilities are around the data that is specifically the data that could put my organization at risk. So the third step in this process is then to set up some security monitoring. And this is because my hacker has actually identified vulnerabilities. So I know that I have certain vulnerabilities in my defenses. So I should now be setting up some kind of monitoring of those vulnerabilities, of those areas of vulnerability. And I should be monitoring them immediately. Because although I now know that I have a vulnerability in my systems, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm already being attacked through that vulnerability. It doesn't mean that hackers are getting in every minute of every day through that vulnerability. It just means that the vulnerability is there. So for example, the fact that I don't lock the back door of my house does not mean that people are walking in and out and robbing and stealing from my house every minute of every day simply because I didn't lock the back door. It means I have a risk, I have a vulnerability by not locking the back door. So what I need to do is set up some security monitoring immediately to tell me if actually anybody does come through that back door between now and when I get an opportunity to fix it and go and lock it. So this is really, security monitoring provides some spotlights which I can shine on the vulnerabilities that I have around my risk data, which will allow me to identify if anybody does get in and if anybody is attacking me through that vulnerability, while I then go and think about how I'm going to fix that vulnerability and mitigate that vulnerability. So what I have here is two forms of security monitoring. The first form of security monitoring has already been mentioned by the previous speaker, which is actually people in my organization. So, people in my organization should be looking for suspicious activity. They should be looking for suspicious emails. They should be looking for people and individuals walking into the building who might not be members of staff or customers who should be there. This is observation around security, which we have a duty to tell our own staff and our own customers and our own guests about. This is a good cyber practice, as well as actually using technological systems and setting up some monitoring systems in the organization, which can electronically monitor some of those vulnerabilities. And again, we don't need huge, expensive enterprise-grade monitoring systems. Now that we understand specifically what the vulnerabilities are around the specific data systems that I should be protecting, I can be more specific about the monitoring that I set up. And that means I can make better decisions about what monitoring systems I use and monitoring technical methods I use. So once I've set these up, as you can see, this forms a Venn diagram, because you can't have a PowerPoint slide deck without a Venn diagram on it. And what we end up with is these three activities, which become cyclical. So my risk assessment that I run on my own data and my own my own information tells me what I should be penetration testing. The penetration test itself tells me specifically what vulnerabilities should I be monitoring. And the monitoring system then tells me about new risks, because it now says, actually, people are attacking through some of these areas, and that's a problem. So I have a cyclical process here. Now, this Venn diagram, as you know, every Venn diagram has this little piece in the middle where all of the three areas overlap. And in this case, this little area in the middle is effectively representing every other product, service, or offering from the entire IT security industry. And I'm not trying to diminish the importance of all of those, devices, technologies, people, services, and experts. The point we're making here is you cannot possibly know what services, devices, or protective measures you should be spending money on if you haven't first done these three steps. If you don't understand specifically what data you're trying to protect, If you don't understand the vulnerabilities that you have in your systems right now, and if you don't have some monitoring on an ongoing basis to tell you what attacks you're being subjected to, how can you possibly know what defenses you should be buying and spending money on? And there's too much activity in our industry where sales representatives convince companies to buy security products because those security products are expensive and they're complicated and they've been proven technologically and they've got flashing lights and they are the most modern technology known to mankind. And this is not a basis for buying any product. The basis for buying a product is that you have a real need for it. So what we are advising SMEs to do is to go through these 3 steps and use the outputs from these 3 steps to educate you as to what systems you really should be then going out and buying, what services you really need, and not just services that are out there that vendors say everybody should have. Now, I'll give you an example here, because when we deliver this talk, very often somebody in the audience will say, yes, but you know, some things it's obvious. It's obvious that I should have certain things like a firewall or antivirus. And therefore, if it's obvious, then I should go and get one of those anyway. Well, you know, I went to an InfoSec trade show this year where we saw 400 vendors on the trade show exposition floor. And in those, among those vendors, there were 93 different firewalls on sale. And one of those firewalls costs 200 euros. And the other firewall at the other end of the scale cost $250,000. So the question is, which one of those firewalls should the organization buy? 200 euros or $250,000? And of course, the answer is you don't know that for sure unless you've done a risk assessment of what data you're protecting. You know the vulnerabilities because you've had a penetration test done, and you know what attacks you're facing because you can see them on your monitoring system. So this is a good example of even things that we say every organization should have. You don't really know if it's the most appropriate version of that solution or that product or service unless you've done this exercise properly. So all of the services that are on offer from the entire industry can now be condensed down into a proper shopping list of what an SME really should be buying based on their own vulnerabilities and their own risk assessment. It's crucial as well that SMEs conduct training, and actually all of the information that you've gathered and that you've put together as part of this cyclical exercise should be trained to all of your staff. And we've heard that as well from our previous speaker, quite right. Every member of staff should be told about the threats, should be explained about emails, not to click on emails and the risks associated with that, and also told which of the data in the organization is the most important data that should be protected, and what vulnerabilities are in the existing systems that need to be backed up by user behavior. And then certain staff, IT staff, compliance staff, and risk management staff need specific training to help them to handle and recognize and handle incidents when they come up. And finally, we also wrap all of this around the subject of compliance, because best practice frameworks provide organizations with the list of things that they should do from a compliance perspective, because experts have put together compliance standards and compliance frameworks saying these are the things that we think you should do. In the United Kingdom, we have something called the Cyber Essentials Scheme, which is a government-supported new standard. It's, as the name implies, it's the very basic things that organizations should do to be cyber protected. And what we do is we will encourage organizations to go out and get Cyber Essentials certified. It's a questionnaire involving 68 questions. It covers 5 key areas of cyber hygiene, from firewalls through to user accounts and malware. And The aim of the UK government is that every company in the UK will be certified to Cyber Essentials as quickly as possible, because then every business in the UK will have a certain minimum standard of cyber hygiene. And there are other standards above this that are more to do with risk assessment, people's policies, documentation. So there's a standard called the Information Assurance for Small to Medium Enterprises, and another one which is obviously more familiar to everybody, which is ISO 27001. We also have standards now emerging in the UK around GDPR. So we encourage organizations to use these standards as a good framework to get them as a starting point for them to improve their cyber hygiene. So this is a presentation that's delivered very quickly to audiences of SMEs to educate them as to how they should approach the task of cyber protection, starting with risk assessment. And it's delivered by members of all of our cyber clusters, along with information about how individuals can get in touch with cyber experts in the region. So that's what I wanted to share with the group today around how we deal with this issue of cyber risk management. How do we communicate to over 600 organizations about cyber hygiene and cyber risk management, so that they in turn can go and communicate that out to the 500,000 businesses in Wales. So I hope that's been useful for everybody.
Thank you very much, Jon. You gave very valuable advices to SMEs, and also it seems that it's a good idea to be in a cluster. So if you have any question for Jon, you can use the chat box, and at the end of this blog we will deal with these questions. Now let's move on to the next presenter, Miguel Manteca. From SMESEC, which is an SME specialized in cybersecurity. Miguel, I hand over to you. You have 10 minutes, please. Miguel?
Can you hear me?
Yes, right now. Perfect. Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you. Okay. Hello to everybody. Thank you for the invitation, Marina. Addressing cyber risk management from the SME perspective. Okay, first of all, who are we? SMESEC is a cybersecurity company. We started to work in 1998. I remember that in that time, for example, Facebook didn't exist, and nobody knew anything about an iPhone, and Google was living a garage. So in that moment, we thought cybersecurity, it would be very important in the future, and it is. We have a very important blog. We post from 1999 during the last 20 years and knew about cybersecurity. If you speak Spanish, I recommend you, I advise you to subscribe to this blog, because it's real interesting for you. What do? We create products and we offer services, anti-fraud services, anti-phishing services, anti-trojans, malware in general, audits, ethical hacking, and much more related to cybersecurity. Okay, what is the most important security risks evaluated by companies' CEOs? If we make a very simple question, what is the single most important asset in your company that needs to be protected from cyber attacks? Most of them, 25% of the CEOs, answer our reputation with our customers. 14% answer that private intra-company communications. The third, strategic plans and initiatives, regulated data, customer information, application and services, product specifications and pricing, and much more. But is this the real that you worry about? In the cybersecurity industry, we think we have to be more practical, and this is what really affects you, and you have to be worried. Like my colleagues told before, the first is data loss, of course. Who does not remember when I cry? The most typical attack to the SMEs that we detect in our companies is usually the infection by a ransomware. And you know that ransomware encrypts the information of your equipment and servers, even to your backup, and request very high amounts to return the system to normal operation. And that's very typical and happens every day, and we have to fight every day with this. All of we remember WannaCry that affected thousands of companies from the smallest to the largest corporations. It was not the first ransomware, but it was the most popular in media. That was good for the companies because for the first time there was a real concern, and those companies started investing resources in security. Okay, economic losses. Many of these ransomware requests for money, and in the case of having been affected by a ransomware, should I pay or not? Difficult to answer, because as a general rule, we advise you not to pay the ransom requested, because the bad guys do not guarantee the return of your information, and that happens every day. And after that, if you pay, they can demand more payments, and if the attack has been successful, they will repeat it. And remember that the bad guys talk one to each other, and probably your company will become a target for these and other attackers. So for me, this is the most important, and I didn't see anything in the first three positions. And interruption of the production process or critical services. If you cannot the possibility to taking orders, if you cannot have the possibility of executing orders, if you have difficulties in delivery, or if you have billing and legal problems, what do you have? You are worried about your reputation for your business, but with these problems, you don't have business. So take a paper and a pencil and try to do it like in the Middle Ages. This is our opinion. And I know most of you are worried about your reputation, but if you don't have your system available, forgive me, but you don't have any business. And many of you have been very worried about this general protection data regulation. And what happens if you have a security breach? All of you know what you have to do. I know the big companies has many and very strong protocols with the way they have to do. But what about SMEs? It's very simple, and at the same time, it's very difficult, because the first you have to do it is to register the incident. The second, find out if it poses a risk to those affected. On third, inform those affected. It's not easy. Sometimes you don't have the information, contact. And fourth, and most important, for legal consequences, is notify the incident to the control authority within a maximum of 72 hours since the incident was detected. Do you have your wallet ready to pay? Because the maximum penalty is up to 4% of your annual turnover. I think most of you know this, but maybe some of you don't know what do you have to do. If you are a small company, or if you are self-employed. So what can we do? Of course, prevention. Prevention is much more important to be proactive than resistive. If you invest in cybersecurity, double the budget you spent last year, you will probably reach half of what you really need, because the bad guys invest 10 times or 20 times from the last year to this one. And of course, performs regular security technical audits, ethical hacking, pen testing, and when you are done, please start again. And third, very important, train all your staff in security, because many of the attacks that are being successful today are carried out through the social engineering. It's very typical. You can have a very strong security policy, and at the end, the users are the problem, and at the end, the attacks come from the users that are not enough enough concentration in the social engineering attacks. And four, depending on the size of your company, we advise you to outsource the security service in a specialist company. A specialist company that has a lot of experience in cybersecurity and can help you to protect your information, your data, and of course your business. And beware of IoT, Internet of Things. We know that many devices that we call full probably have no connection. Now, in this day, are beginning to connect to the internet. The estimation for this year is about 23,000 million devices connected, and in 2025 it would be about 75,000 million devices. That's 3 times more. It's a lot. Many of the risks come from Internet of Things. European project Cyberwathcning. Cyberwathcning is secure and safe Internet of Things. Many of the vulnerabilities exploited in the last times comes from IoT devices. That is why the European Union has launched the Cyberwathcning project, Secure and Safe Internet of Things, which tries to avoid the future. It's about to design the security structure that these devices will have in the future, and that is a standard for the industry. Why Cyberwathcning? The IoT is coming up as faster than we think. This is the reality. And with its arrival, EU industry, homes and society will be catapulted into the huge arena of security risks that accompany an untested yet already universal technology that directly manages our cyber-physical reality on a daily and indeed second by second basis. Here you can find the companies that are working in the project, big and specialist companies that try to protect you in the future. For example, telcos like Deutsche Telekom, universities like Berlin, Essex Institute of Theoretical and Applied Informatics, ETIS. So main companies, specialists in cybersecurity, that try to protect you, your companies in the future. And of course, we are open for collaboration. SMEs and cybersecurity industry must go hand in hand, because the challenges are really difficult to solve. Because of that, we're looking for companies that are willing to face this challenge. We don't have much time to answer questions, but at the end you can write me if you want, or my email is here. That's all. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, you can write me. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. This is very interesting recommendations. And with this, we have finished this first part of the webinar. So if you have any other question for Miguel or any other of these three speakers, please use the chat box. But we can start with a question from Michel Lois to Samuel Fricker. And the question is that he said that expected value depends not only on the cost, also on the probability. So if the cost is high but the probability is low, it may be rational not to invest in cybersecurity. Do you also have data concerning the probability of such breach? So please, Samuel, can you answer this question? I don't know if the mic is open. Samuel? I have a problem with the mic. I'm trying to unmute Samuel, but I cannot do it. Samuel, can you unmute your mic? Oh, I'm trying to unmute it, but I cannot. So if someone can help me from the organizers.
Maybe you have to pass the presenter mode to Samuel. Samuel.
Ah, okay. Okay. It seems that we have a problem with the mic. Okay, I will ask a question to John Davis from Michel Lois again, and then I will try again to the question for Samuel. So the question for John Davis, okay, is what about when you have sensitive data and you ask the white hat to do pen testing to access this data? What about the privacy infringement of those data? You can, how can you know for sure that the white hat hacker can be trusted with the privacy of the most sensitive data of your clients? How should the clients be informed that confidential data, in example, health data, may be seen by a white hat hacker who is not a doctor? A lot of questions in one. Please, Samuel. Please, John.
Yeah, I think this is a very good question because it's a matter of trust. And as we know, there are a lot of IT professionals in the industry. There are a lot of people working in IT who say that they can do penetration testing and white hat hacking and ethical hacking. But really, how do you know this? How do you know that the person you choose as your penetration tester is trustworthy? And I think this is where having a cluster of companies who get to know each other and learn about each other and can meet monthly in an informal environment where they can network and have conversations and get to know each other face to face. Because then you can learn better about which professionals can and should be trusted. You can learn more about their credentials. And whether or not they've got any qualifications or certifications with trusted bodies and trusted authorities. because it can be very difficult to choose the right hacker. And if you get the wrong hacker, then quite rightly, you are revealing sensitive data to someone who you're not sure you can trust. So I think this is one of the benefits of having a cluster or a cybersecurity cluster, is the ability to get to know these people and learn about their trustworthiness before you use them yourself or recommend them to your customers. With regards to the GDPR nature of the question, we now have a third party in the form of the penetration tester who is going to see the data. So obviously under GDPR, I now have a legal obligation to put into my privacy policy and my privacy notices that customer data or data subjects data may be seen by a penetration tester. I would need to provide details of that under certain circumstances for certain data, and I would certainly have to have information about that available for any data subject who requested that information. So within my policies and within my documentation, I have to declare that. And certainly with new customers, if I want to bring new customers online, I would have to give them that information at the point at which I seek their consent to use their data, because their data might now be shared with a third party, in this case, a penetration tester. So I do have responsibilities for that. With regards to the NHS, with the National Health Service element of the question, which is where, for example, as a patient, I give my data to somebody and I expect a doctor to see it, but now suddenly a non-medical person in the form of a penetration tester is seeing it. Actually, there are contractual and legal obligation issues there where a health authority would have the ability to share information with certain third parties without necessarily having to disclose all the details to a data subject, because they're not using the legal basis of consent to do that. They've got a legal basis of contractual or legal obligation or vital interest. So there are other legal bases they can rely on, but they should also use the same diligence when choosing a penetration tester. So it's a good set of questions, and it is a sticky area. It's a difficult area, but actually I don't think that issues around data protection and GDPR should get in the way of good cybersecurity practice. The challenge is to enable good cybersecurity practice like penetration testing in line with GDPR and other data protection laws. It's not about ignoring good cybersecurity practice in order to be compliant with data protection laws, because that is counterproductive.
Thank you very much, John, for this answer, and thank you to Michel Lois for the question. Unfortunately, Samuel has left. I don't know why, if it's a problem of his connection or he had to leave. So sorry, Michel, but we will try to answer later if it's possible. But as we are over time, we are moving on to Aitor. We already finished the first part, and we are moving on to the second part of the webinar to focus on possible solutions for managing cyber risks from the result or expected results of different European research projects. The first project addressing this issue is Cybeco, which objective is to develop a new framework for managing cybersecurity risks, focusing on cyber insurance. So I hand over to Aitor Couce from ICMAT, a Spanish research center. Aitor, you have 10 minutes from now. Thank you very much.
Hello, all. I'm going to present some developments of Cybeco, focusing on the risk analysis tool that we are developing in the project. So as Marina mentioned, we are working at a research project where working on cybersecurity, but especially we focus on the cyber insurance aspects. We are a consortium of 7 partners, universities like Northumbria, research centers like us, SIC, but also companies like AXA that with expertise in cyber insurance. I go briefly through the context of the research. The first one, cybersecurity. That just mentioned that well, the increasing dependency of our society and businesses on ICT and the interconnection of systems. Also, the increased quantity and also variety of attackers, types of attacks, potential impacts like cyber physicals, personal data, etc. So when it comes to the cyber insurance, this is an emerging market, especially in Europe and for SMEs. It is more mature for big companies in the United States, but insurance companies are still designing and new types of cyber insurance products. So it's an emerging market and a changing one. Another relevant aspect shared with cybersecurity risk analysis in general is the lack of data to feed the risk assessment information for eliciting probabilities, knowing impacts, and etc. So our purpose is basically developing adapting new risk analysis models to this cyber insurance selection problem. And also in Cybeco, we are exploring behavioral aspects related to this to cyber insurance selection, and also policy aspects and compliance aspects in the European Union. So this is the basic structure of the project. The overall project is based on the cybersecurity expertise and cases that AXA is providing to us. So they give us requirements, insights, and scenarios for developing the models. The 3 lines of research: first, the behavioral aspects; second is the policy and social and compliance aspects; and third, the risk analysis modeling aspect. All of these research developments, some of these research developments will be part of the software toolbox, mostly of 2 types. We will have a knowledge base of concepts and related to cybersecurity, like a list of threats or list of policy or compliance regulations or normatives in European Union. And the second part will be the risk analysis tool. Okay, so the second part of the presentation, I will focus on describing the risk analysis tool. So basically, it's a web application to help business, but especially we are targeting SMEs in assessing the cybersecurity risks that they can have. And also it's for helping them to determine the security controls and insurance products that might best reduce the risk. So the tool provides a step-by-step approach to risk analysis process. Basically, we ask the user input on some information. Second, we use our mathematical models, the algorithms of the mathematical models to perform the risk analysis calculations. And third, we present the results of the calculation to the user. Basically, a recommendation of the best portfolio of measures, and also some information about the risk scenario, like the probability of the events or the expected impacts. So when it comes to the input, we ask users to identify elements of the organization, like assets, some organizational features, etc. So, for example, in the screen, we show whether the user wants to select if they want to include in the risk assessment the types of assets like facilities, IT infrastructure, market share, etc. So the idea is that if they have the information, like for example the value of facilities or the number of computers, they can include that. But also if they don't select this this element, we perform a more general risk assessment based on a standard information of prototypical companies or a typical SME. Also, another aspect is the selection of threats, and this is a demonstration of some of them. So, basically, for example, selecting both the type of attacker that they might include in the assessment, but also the type of attack. So, for example, from attackers, hackers or organized cyber criminals, each one with different characteristics in motivation and technical resources, etc. And then the type of attack. We just show 3, but in the final version will be more. Like, for example, generic attacks like shutdown of website, manipulation of product and services, or exfiltration of personal information. These attacks encapsulate more specific, more technical and specific attacks. For example, the shutdown of website includes the different types of the denials of services attacks. So the tools also ask the user for the security controls and cyber insurance products they want to include in the assessment. So overall, once the tool obtains the input from the user, it performs the calculations in the background. It will take some minutes because we run this in a software software algorithm implementing the mathematical models we are developing in the project. So this graph basically represents the mathematical model of a generic version of the mathematical models we are working on. So, for example, the squares represent decisions like security controls and the insurance product selection. The rounded node represents probabilistic events like the potential presence of threats or the potential impacts, etc. So I'm not going to explain this mathematical model, but basically this is all the information that the user provides to us is dropped into this mathematical model as parameters. We perform the calculation. After a few minutes, we present the results to the user. This screen maybe is very the font is too small to read, but basically this is a screenshot of the web application presenting the results. Basically, we have two main inputs. Basically, the first one up here, the recommended option based on the input from the user, and then the details of the risk assessment. So let me move this. So this screenshot comes from a basic demo we ran for the experiments, in which we ran an experiment with testing users, in which we offer basic security measures and also basic cyber insurance. But this screenshot is useful to show the output of the tool. Oops. So in the second part of the screen, we have the different portfolios ranked and the expected total cost, and also potential the indicators of different events like probability of suffering a cyber attack or the expected cost of the attack. So this screenshot displays a demo case we run with for the experiment to test the user interface, etc. But the idea, the final version of the tool will include a complete risk assessment based on the assets, threats, etc. Identified with AXA in the risk scenarios. And the idea is to having by the end of the project in May, the final version of the prototype. So this is one of the outcomes of the project. Another, as I mentioned, were the the knowledge base about behavioral aspects and policy and compliance, and moderate this presentation. Also, if you have questions, you can send it to in this webpage and in this email, Nikos Veslidas, which is the project manager. And I also can facilitate you later my emails if you have some more specific questions about the risk analysis model and the tool. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aitor. That was a very interesting project and a very interesting risk analysis tool. If you have any question to Aitor, please use the chat box and he will answer at the end of the webinar. Our next presenter is Ahmed Bonfou, who comes from Paris Sud University, and he's partner of the project Hermeneut, which objective is to create a holistic dynamic cybersecurity risk assessment model and approach to cost-benefit analysis. I hand over to you, Ahmed. So from now you have 10 minutes.
Hello, good morning. Can you see my slide and hear my voice as well?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. I think this Hermeneut is complementary to Cybeco project. The core objective of Hermeneut is the analysis of the intangible impact or the impact of cyber attack on intangible firms. So we are here the partners. So the project coordinator is engineering from Italy, and Paris Sud, my university, is working as scientific coordinator for this project. So basically the project is split into 7 work packages. Work package 2 is dealing with the likelihood of attack. Work package 3, which we are in charge of, is dealing with the impact on firms, and 4 on the question of risk mitigation and risk management, and 5 is about testing with end users, especially in IP intensive industries and healthcare. My presentation will focus only on work package 3 and the economic impact. So we have basically 3 research questions: or what are the effects of cyber attack on firm value and their intangible? Second, what are the impact on the macro level, especially at the sectoral levels? And thirdly, what are the type of business model we can approach for cyber attackers, given the data we have on firms and so on? Of course, as a research project, we start with developing a taxonomy. So this is a taxonomy we developed for intangibles around, I would say, basically 7 components: IPR, innovation, competence, organization, capital, data, reputation, and brand. And for analytical reason, we had to aggregate these taxonomy into 3 main components. I will come back to it later. So how we do our research? So basically what we are doing, we have modeling on the one hand, and we have data on the other hand. For microeconomic aspect, we first start with evaluating intangible here. So, and we differentiate between attacked firm and non-attacked firms. We have 2 samples, and by difference we determine the impact on value intangibles. And then we develop also even study analysis for those companies listed in the market, financial market, to determine the impact on their share. And we develop also national language processing for analyzing the content of the attacks. So the effect of the attack on different types of intangibles. So this is for microeconomic impact. For macroeconomic impact, we develop an input-output approach quite used in sector analysis. And we develop based on the simulation for attack on specific sectors, especially in this case for ICT and financial services, and almost in US, but also for specific EU countries. In this case, it will be France, Germany, Italy, and UK. And thirdly, we are analyzing the business model of cyber attackers. So given the size of the company, given the intensity of R&D of companies, what is the likelihood of attack given these characteristics? So these are basically what we have done. So if you take here the case of Equifax, which is very known, and you see the share, the evolution of share from 8 September 2017 to 9 September, the decrease in share, and we see the valuation of the share during the period of attack. Of course, one of the question here is the recovery, possible recovery of the share during the period of attack. With the assumption, what we calculate is for even study is how given the reaction of the market, how the share behave, given what would have been expected if there have not been any attack. So this is what the main subject of the event study. For NLP analysis, what we analyze the structure of the impact on three main components: IPR, innovation, key competence and human capital, and organization capital. In this case, we see this is a theoretical case that given our lexicon that this company has been attacked almost for the organization capital, which is the process and so on, and thirdly for its innovation and less for key competence. So this is for macroeconomic, this is model for macroeconomic level. What we do, we have an attack on a sector. In this case, it might be ICT, and we calculate the impact via inoperability simulation and the direct economic loss. But we calculate also the intangible impact. Either it is indirect or directly related to economic loss here. And then we have another impact on the sectors. The data we use four main sources of data: Advizen database, Veris, which is an open source database, Compuset for financial aspect, for economic aspect of firms, and World Input Output database for sector aspect. The results. So some of the first result, of course, we evaluate intangible firms, which are very important. Roughly 80% of value of companies are intangible. We calculate via event study the impact on our sample. So in this case, we calculate the impact on share 5 days before the attack and 5 days after, and we see that in this case there is of course very substantial decrease in the share in abnormal returns, so not the share, but the abnormal return of firms. And we calculate this coefficient of 0.6%, and we calculate and we compare it to some of systemic event like Spanish flu in in the literature early 90s, early 80s, and Hong Kong flu more recently, and we see that this ratio is quite high compared to other systemic event. We could compare our sample to counterfactual, and we see, for instance, with finance, that this is for all sectors. Sorry, that there is very clear similarity between our sample attacked versus non-attack, and this is the case for finance. We take the finance sector, our attacked firms are very similar to those non-attacked firms. So when you calculate the impact, we are doing. This means that allow us to have more very rigorous evaluation of the impact. Now coming to figures, so if we took the year 2013 and we calculate the loss of intangible for ICT sector in US based on data we have, we see that the loss for ICT is more than 850 or $805 billion in 2013 for the ICT sectors, and the first sector is wholesale and retail. So we see that the impact on intangible is very, very high, and already very high, and almost beyond the actual market for cybersecurity, globally speaking, which is according to OECD, or roughly below $4 billion worldwide. So if you compare the impact on intangible, which is $855 billion only in US for ICT, compared to market for insurance, for cybersecurity, which is still very small. This is so we have this figure for all the sectors we consider for the key sectors, and of course we can delineate after the relative importance of this figure. But just take into account this micro aspect of the value of intangible when it came to comparing attacked firm versus non-attacked firms. Now, when you do a simulation for the same sector ICT, so if we take this is for what we do, we calculate, we make the hypothesis of inoperability of the firm. So the concept of inoperability refers basically to the fact that this is referred to in earlier presentation for SME, the fact that you cannot do anything, you cannot send a bill, you cannot produce. So if you have a 10% inoperability in the ICT sectors, we simulate the impact in US for $170 billion. If there is 40% inoperability, the direct impact is more than $500 billion, and the intangible impact depends upon the calculation. But I would say the indirect impact is 80 billion, and here 75 billion. Now we do the same thing for macroeconomic aspect. We have done simulation for US for the ICT sectors. We have this calculation I just referred to for direct economic loss for 10%. Sorry, the previous figure are for almost 1 year. It's 380 if the attack has an impact during 1 year. But if it has an attack only in 180 days, of course the impact is quite smaller. So it's smaller. So here we have direct impact in ICT sectors. With two hypotheses, 10% of inoperability, and here it should be 40%. Yeah, this is 10% and 40%, which with the figure and the impact on other sectors. Of course, the first sector impacted as ICT with 15%, but we have also other impacted sectors like activity accelerated financial, advertising, ICT itself, of course, motion picture, real estate, and so on. So via the simulation, we can have roughly a first approach. I think this is one of the first approach worldwide done to the cascading effect of cyber attack, not only on one sector, but also on very close sectors. And this is allow us to do it via. This is possible because we are using this input-output data. We have done the same exercise in UK, in France, for instance, of course, because the sector is smaller, the impact is of course smaller. But we have also similar impact. Germany, Italy, and we have done the same exercise for financial services, and we are actually working on working papers for the two sectors which coming soon. So the impact here in US is roughly 40% inoperability is $144 billion. Now, regarding I'm coming back now to the macroeconomic impact, and we see that if you took our taxonomy, we differentiating between IPR, innovation, key competence, organization, capital. We see that there is, in terms of impact, given the data we have in financial and financial services, the impact is almost about key competence, which include reputation and organization capital, and less on IPR and innovation. If you see the healthcare, it is almost about key competence and reputation. If you see the information services, the share of IPR innovation is relatively more important than in other sectors, but of course, key competence are still there. And if you see professional scientific and technical services, the share of IPR innovation is quite small compared to the others. So via NLP analysis, we can have an estimate of the impact on very critical sectors we consider and study. Finally, maybe I can end with one very interesting dimension, which is the business model with the attackers. When you have the attackers, the question for insurers, but also for business people and policymakers, what are the characteristics that will determine the probability of attack for a sector. And we are considering in this case 2-dimension R&D. If company is very intensive R&D, what are the type of attack the company will be subject to? And we consider another dimension, which is the organization capital, which we evaluated here using a proxy measure using literature, which is standard sale and general expense. So given these 2 dimensions, the question here, what should be the likelihood of attack or the characteristic of business modeling? So if you take R&D here, we see that R&D is the predicted probability of attack is more those related to phishing, security incident, data breach are quietly growing when you increase the R&D effort. However, when privacy violation, privacy issues are not has no is not related to investment in R&D. If you can increase your budget on R&D, if you increase R&D, you will have a privacy violation is not related to that. So basically, the three criteria of the three type of attack for R&D are first phishing, security incident, and then data breach. Well, if you look to general expense, which is now what you call organization capital, which is I mean a proxy for organization capital, we see that here again phishing. Sorry, there is no these aspects are not clearly related. So the more you increase your effort in organization capital, there is no a positive relationship between the increase of SGA and this form of attack. So basically, if I come back here, the lesson here from preliminary result at least, that R&D intensive company are, the more they are intensive in R&D, the more they are subject to phishing, security incident, data breach. We have also another data related to the size and so on. We are still working on this very interesting dimension of business attack, business model of attack, given the characteristic firm, and we are refining a result. So these are, I think these are some of the data which should be interested for firms, including SME, because in our sample we have roughly 2,000 companies with all this data, and we have roughly 300 SMEs. So this applies as well to SMEs, even though these results do not differentiate between large companies and SMEs. So these are, I think, some preliminary results I would like to share with you. Of course, we are very open to questions, and here's the website for Hermenet project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. It was very impressive, your analysis about economic impact on cyber attacks. We are a bit over time, so we are going fast to the next presenter. The last but not least, I would like to introduce to Yanis Keakoglu from REA Group, who is presenting the Cyberwathcning project, which provides a simulated environment to create cyber incident and cyber attacks scenarios for students and IT professionals. Ioannis, now I hand over to you. You have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly. Thank you.
Great. And let me change my. Can you see my main screen or the secondary?
The secondary.
I'll fix that. Now?
Now, perfect. Thank you, Yanis.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this seminar. It was very interesting what we had so far. I'm working for Rea Group as a security engineering, and in the context of this webinar, I will try to emphasize the training and simulation support that can give, sorry, training and simulation support that can give to the SMEs in the context of the cyberwiser.edu project, which I'm really happy to participate. It's a very nice and interesting project. And as an outline, I will start briefly to point some of the challenges and barriers that the cyberwiser.eu project can address. And I will not go in details. We already heard a lot of that. And then I will introduce the project, and most importantly, I will tell you how it can support SMEs. And finally, I will close with some notes on the pilots and the assets that we currently have. So I will mainly stick in two main pillars. First is the increasing risk. The need of the companies nowadays for an online presence, multi-sites connectivity, portability, and so forth. It's what makes the risk increase. In old days, you had your office, only everything in paper, so no cyber risk. That's not the case nowadays. Second is the lack of resources in three aspects: personnel, hardware, and software. So starting from the personnel, we usually find that the IT and security departments are understaffed or barely fitting the needs of the enterprise, and in many cases we don't even find a separate security department. The second, which is a big deal in at least whole Europe, is the lack of the experienced professionals. Unfortunately, the cyber domain is relatively new, and we don't have enough professionals to cover the needs of the market. Continuing with the hardware, the security hardware tends to cost a lot, and the SMEs even may not buy a hardware, try to find other solution, or if they manage to buy that hardware, then after a while they cannot follow up with the upgrades, leaving them with old and sometimes unsupported hardware. Continuing with the software, it's also costly to excuse me, to buy some business related software, and the same case as the hardware. When you find the money to do that, you find yourself either not going to upgrade the the software or change to an open source solution that you can find in the market nowadays. You can find very good solutions as an open source, but it requires time and experience to set up and maintain in order to have a very productive and secure product. Let's start with the cyberwiser.eu project now, the introduction. It's a 30 months EU project, started this September. And if we want to summarize in one sentence, the project aims to become the reference and authoritative cyber aids platform for professionals, and not only. In the project, there are participating 9 partners, as you can see on the slide. And the main targets are the cybersecurity students and professionals, of course, the SMEs, but also the large enterprises, public administration, and universities and research institutes. What can the cyberwise.eu provide to the SMEs to support their needs? First of all, it gives you an advanced and realistic simulated environment. You can either start with a small portion of your network to create a simple lab that you want to test something, a new software, a new hardware, or you can even simulate your whole environment with all the complexity it has. And then in this environment, you can train, first of all, your professionals without having the risk to affect your operational environment. In this environment, you can test your procedures. I have my security procedures all the organizations at some points have their procedures, but not all of them are practicing to find where is it enough or where is it not. So in this environment, you can deploy the hardware you want, the hardware simulated you want, the security measurements, the security devices, and then try to test what fits in your needs, what works and what does not. You can create custom training for your professionals so you get over the lack of experienced professionals, starting from very basic to very advanced scenarios. And moreover, the platform is not just a theoretical model, but it also provides you hands-on training. The professional can, or the trainee in general, can actually work on a computer, on a CM, on a security device, as it would be in real life, and see if all of these things that are designed and planned works, and how he can protect the network, how can he become better in his job. Continuing with risk management, which is the main topic of this webinar, the platform gives you a risk model analysis and simulation. It can even propose some mitigation measures, and it can give you the cost-benefit analysis. We know that in security, there is not only one way to protect your network. If you had unlimited resources, yes, maybe the solution would be unique, but we don't have. So we try to find some alternative solutions. As stated before, I may do my job with a firewall of 200 euros, but I may need one of 10,000. What needs to be done is to analyze the simulation, the situation, do the simulation, do the cost-benefit analysis, and then see what fits your needs. And that's what the platform can provide you. In all of these aspects, you get a performance evaluation either of your models, your processes, your practicing, and your people. Closing with our pilots, we have 4 pilots. The 3 you can see here are from critical infrastructure and academia. And the 4th and the most important for SMEs is the open pilot that we're going to implement. In this way, we're trying to get more feedback from the end user and make the platform better, even better. And for you, you can participate in this pilot and get a free training, of course, and some professional reward and visibility through our badge systems and cybersecurity list of participants that are going to be in the registry that this platform is going to maintain. And I would like to add a few comments about the basic assets we have, because this project is not something new, something that likes to have all these capabilities. Is based on the wiser.edu project and the assets from the partners that are already existing and are operational. And our main goal is to enhance those tools and integrate them to provide the full capabilities of the platform. Starting with 2 cyber ranges, one from our company, REA Group, and one from EDP. Continuing with a web-based e-learning platform from Trust IT Services and the virtual scenario deployment tool from XLab, and the high-performance security information event management solution and the risk assessment engine from Atos. All these are tools that already existing or are already operational, and we're trying, as I said, to expand their capabilities to integrate with other tools that I don't mention here, like a vulnerability assessment, anomaly detection, economic risk calculator, to provide all the tools you need to do a good training, but also a research. And as I said before, for the SMEs to try to get the best of the platform, to understand what is their capabilities and what are their needs, what they need to do in a cost-effective manner. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm free for questions.
Thank you very much, Yanis. I think you presented a very useful platform. We are a bit late, but we still have some questions. This time, the question is for Aitor of Cybeco. And when do you think this tool will be ready for a test, or even when will be launched? Because there were also a participant, Hani Banayoti, who wants to know more about this tool and even see a demo if possible. Aitor, please, could you answer this question?
Hi. The tool is in the first version, so we have a prototype, but it's for internal purposes. So the final version will be in April, but I guess a few months earlier we will have an open version to the public, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But, I can show you what I can ask for more specific details. If you send me your email in your chat, I can send you an answer from the partners developing the tool.
Okay, so then what we would do to Hani Vanayoti, we will send his email to you, and then you can contact and see if it's possible a demo.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if there is no any other question, we are a bit late. We are over time. So if you have more question, but you don't want to make the question right now, you can send to us through the Cyberwatching site, and we can send your questions to the speakers today. We had a very interesting webinar today with a very high-level speaker. So thank you once again to the speakers and also to the people who is still connected. And to conclude, I would like to remember to visit Cyberwatching site to read more about Marketplace and End User Club in case you found interesting what Nick Ferguson said about them in his presentation. And as I said in the beginning, we will publish all this presentation online and also the recording. Thank you very much to all of you, and goodbye.